Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
So, hello everyone. Hello, all the students. So, today's session actually I'll be leading. Today, actually, Sir is a little busy. So, usually, Sir will be taking these sessions, but time to time, I'll be also taking, and some other senior students also will be taking this session. So, before starting, so Abhishek, should we show the Learn Gita, Live Gita, the video, or should I just start?
Sir, I think everyone has registered already in the Learn Gita, Live Gita. Most of them.
Okay.
You can ask if they have done or not.
Okay. So before starting, let me share my screen and let me. So today, let me share the screen, and meanwhile, let me tell you a few words that this Saturday is usually our regular session. And in a regular semester, this Saturday evening, let's say this 6:30 or 7:30, we would start. So there will be different activities from 6:30 to 7:30, and then 7:30 the class will start. And our programs are in person usually. And in Saturday, actually, we have participation, very large participation, around 150, more than 150 students. And it's a very nice interactive session with Sir. And then there was nice sumptuous feast also after the program. But at the present moment, we could do this much only. So, and also from today onward, we will start Learn Gita, Live Gita lessons. So most of you have registered on Learn Gita, Live Gita. And so to motivate all of you, like this will be like a group study, and as well as some clarification and some more interactive, way of studying it. And let me just share my screen. So Abhishek, I have joined in a different different device. Maybe you can give me the sharing option.
I think you everyone has the right. You can share.
Okay. So this is the lesson 1, and most of you, those who have registered, so they will get it. And let me see if it is shared properly. Yeah. So this is the lesson 1, and why it is not coming properly? Yeah, it's coming. And so this lesson, all of you, those who have registered, so they have got this material, and we'll just do little bit study and discussion. And at any point of time, we can take like questions or comments, and we can do the discussion. And also from my side, I'll be also asking questions, and feel free to answer by unmuting, and or even put your response in the chat box. So before starting the Bhagavad Gita, I would like to tell few things that to understand the mystery of Bhagavad Gita or the science of Bhagavad Gita, we need some prerequisite and qualification is needed. For example, like in our day-to-day experience, when we enter in IIT system, you be a student or someone be a faculty or be a employee or anybody, they has to go through certain tests, certain certain qualification the system will check. Similarly, for Bhagavad Gita, there are certain qualification, and in the first lesson, those qualifications will be more discussed, and some other topics also will be discussed. And of course, you might ask this question that why Bhagavad Gita? What kind of qualification? This qualification for Bhagavad Gita, everybody has. Everybody inherently has these qualifications, because Bhagavad Gita is like this knowledge is the right for everyone. It's a birthright for everybody. And when we bring that qualifications consciously in front of us, then we can understand the mystery of Bhagavad Gita. So without further speaking, let's start, and let's do little prayer. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So lesson 1, Bhagavad Gita, the timeless science. So the question here is that why should I study the Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad Gita is the most quintessential literature among all Vedic compositions. This composition, as compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva, has been endearing to all those who seek truth, who look for perfection, who are interested in a complete science of everything, irrespective of caste, creed, religion, and nationality. This holy book presents the science of life as it is, which was originally spoken to Arjuna by Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the battlefield of Mahabharata approximately 5,000 years ago. So from this first paragraph, what we are learning is, so we know the Vedic literature, so many of you will be aware, and there are primarily the 4 Vedas, Rig, Sam, Yajur, Atharva, and then we have the Upanishads. There are many Upanishads, primarily 108. Puranas, there are major 18 Puranas, and then we have Itihasas like Ramayana and Mahabharata, and then many other like other literature. And also in the other side, there are let's say Ayurveda, Dhanurveda. These are for medicine, another is for military science. So those were the things in Vedic literature. So here it is said that Bhagavad Gita is the most essential, like essence of everything is there in Bhagavad Gita. And how many verses are there in Bhagavad Gita? Only 700 verses. So it doesn't take great effort to study and try to understand the literature if we have proper guidance. So this is the point here. And who has compiled this literature? Srila Vyasadeva. And all the Vedic literature actually is composed by Srila Vyasadeva. And who will be interested for this Vedic or on study of Bhagavad Gita? Who is seeking truth, who are looking for perfection, who are interested in a complete science of everything. And one point is mentioned here, Bhagavad Gita is beyond caste, creed, religion, and nationality. You might think what I am saying, Bhagavad Gita is for Hindus. That is what people think. But no. See, Bhagavad Gita originally spoken in the land of Bharatvarsha, in our country. But this is a completely science. And if you see, when this knowledge is properly distributed, for example, like yoga, meditation, you may see that in the Western world, they are taking more seriously about yoga, meditation than many of us. So why it is so? Because the Bhagavad Gita, the science of yoga, is actually universal. So that we will find out more while we study more. Through the ages, Srimad Bhagavad Gita has inspired and guided hosts of philosophers and scientists. Its influence is not limited to India. There is not a single language in the world in which Bhagavad Gita has not been translated. Just like Quran and Bible are known to all over the world, Bhagavad Gita is also known and respected in the entire world. So very clear statement, and of course these are the all the texts are taken from Bhagavad Gita, and Sir has put all the points in a very systematic way, so that like the people like us who are in an academic background, they can easily relate and they can really enter in the subject of Bhagavad Gita easily. So Bhagavad Gita have been translated in all the languages, and it's known all over the world. As I mentioned, that yoga, meditation, karma, if you talk about it, it's universal. Everybody knows it in all world, like in the Western world, be it in Africa, everywhere it is known. Bhagavad Gita is not the science of a particular community. It is the universal science of the soul. It is a science that compels us to embrace divinity and divine qualities. All other bodies of knowledge are subject to change, but this body of knowledge contained in Bhagavad Gita is timeless, eternal. So this is very, very important point, that different types of knowledge we see in the day-to-day life, those are changeable. How it is? Take for an example, like our modern science, it is like a evolution going on. And take an example like the atom. At one point of time, the scientists thought that atom is the most fundamental component in matter. And later on, they found out that there are more fundamental elements like electron, proton, neutron, and later on there are much more discovery in physics, and there are more fundamental elements, and there are wave theory, particle theory, many things are coming up, and those things again will be rectified by a superior discovery. So this is the way, and we will talk about it later, like why this is like this and why Bhagavad Gita knowledge is unchangeable and it is eternally like the same knowledge is there. And of course, like the quick point, you can see that Bhagavad Gita is spoken by a perfect person, that is Krishna. Krishna is the perfect person, and of course Bhagavad Gita directly explained that he is the supreme Lord, he is the God himself. And when a perfect person speaks and gives the knowledge, that knowledge will be always perfect. And another thing is that the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita talks about the soul, and everybody, like all the entities, like human, be it animal, or the plants, aquatics, everybody, like all are soul actually. In spiritual level, if you see, everybody is soul. And Bhagavad Gita talks not in the bodily level, rather talks in a spiritual or the level of soul, and it is unchangeable. If a big reservoir of water is within one's reach, then where is the need to go looking for a well in order to quench thirst? Bhagavad Gita is exactly like a big reservoir of water that explains the essence of all Vedic literature, and indeed, there is no need to resort to any other literature in order to understand the science of self-realization. So I'll just explain it. The screen is little slowly moving. So you can see that there is a clear analogy that if we have a large reservoir, let's say we have a big reservoir, clear water lake, and the house is just beside that, do we need a small well? In the olden days, actually, there used to be people used to take all water from lake or river, all the surface water, not the underground water. And they used to dig well also where the water is not available. So we can see from this analogy, when we have a big reservoir of water, we don't need a small well. All the necessities will be fulfilled from the big reservoir of water. Similarly, when we have the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, so that time that time, there is no need of other literature to understand the complete science of Bhagavad Gita. Complete science about other things. I'm sorry, little bit. I have little power cut here, but I think my screen is still visible, and maybe my video quality is not good. So we'll continue, and there are few questions I'll ask, and this will be little bit interactive. Whom is Bhagavad Gita endearing to? So who all will take to the study and practice of Bhagavad Gita? So this is one of the question. Can anyone answer? Maybe I'll keep the question, and also see answer also is there in the same screen. So if anyone wants to speak, they can unmute and tell. There are a few questions.
Sir, the people who want to seek the absolute truth.
Yeah, who is speaking?
Sir, Alok, I'm Alok.
Okay. Very good, Alok. Who is seeking for truth and so there are other points also here. It is there who look for perfection, who are interested in complete science of everything. Second question is that in how many languages has Bhagavad Gita been translated?
Almost all the languages, sir.
Yeah, Basu is answering. Yeah, correct. So if you see all the languages, actually, at least the languages which has the written form, those who has like scripts are there in the all the languages Bhagavad Gita have been translated. Okay, the third question: why is Bhagavad Gita timeless?
Because it is a science of soul, and soul is eternal.
Very good point. And anybody else has any other point why Bhagavad Gita is timeless?
Sir, because Bhagavad Gita is about absolute truth, and absolute truth is timeless. Sanatan, it is eternal.
Correct. Varun is answering this point. Okay. And anyone else? I told actually another point about the source who is giving the knowledge, and that makes it timeless.
It is given to us by Lord Krishna himself, and he is the perfect entity.
Correct, Basu. Thank you. Fourth question is, give an analogy to compare Bhagavad Gita with other Vedic literature. So the last analogy we have studied.
A fruit is compared as all Vedic literatures, and Bhagavad Gita is compared as juice of that fruit.
Mayank, you are right, but the one we are reading now. So we read something now.
Sir, we
the
have
well and the
reservoir and a well. So we will prefer.
Yeah, Siddharth.
If we have
correct. Very good. Okay. So Bhagavad Gita is like a big reservoir of water, and whereas other literature are considered like a small well. So anybody has any questions so far? They can ask, and otherwise I'll just keep on going little bit. So this is just, we are initiating the study of these lessons. And when you start studying yourself, then you will find many interesting points. And also there are several videos very nicely presented by Sir, Professor Behra. So you can log in to your account and you will see all the videos corresponding to the lesson. Okay, the next one is Bhagavad Gita, the torchlight of wisdom. Arjuna in the battlefield got confused about his duty. Like Arjuna, we are all confused about our duty. This world is a battlefield. It requires great humility to ask perfect questions. Arjuna had that humility, and thus he surrendered to Lord Krishna, the absolute truth, to get his confusion removed. Similarly, we should also surrender to Lord Krishna while seeking his guidance. Lord Krishna's instructions are compiled in Bhagavad Gita to guide us through the ups and downs of life. Bhagavad Gita is meant for those who wish to transcend all confusion. It seems that Krishna spoke to Arjuna, so it is meant only for him, but that is not true. It is meant for everybody. When you are confused in your search for truth, then the removal of that kind of confusion will bring enlightenment to one and all. So, this is the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. You know that Bhagavad Gita have been spoken in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the reason is that Arjuna got confused about his duty, and he was seeking for the solution, and he surrendered himself, or he asked and he presented his confused state in front of Lord Krishna, the perfect personality. And then Krishna gave the knowledge, and all his confusions are eradicated. Since this knowledge is in the spiritual level, therefore it is relevant to everybody. So let's see what some of the great historical personalities have said about Bhagavad Gita. Okay, before going to that, there are a few questions coming. What quality is needed to ask perfect question? Let's see.
You need to be humble.
Okay,
Great
Aryan.
humility.
Perfect. Who told the last? Humility.
Great humility.
Okay, Mayank. Yeah, perfect. So you see the point, you can see that why we need this quality. It is not that we are speaking. Let me share my another screen. Okay, somehow only one screen is visible. Okay, this is a verse from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text number 34. It's like this: Tadvidhi pranipatena praniparsnena sevaya upadakshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattadarshina. Okay, the translation is: just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So several points are there in this verse, but one of the point is that submissive. So see, for example, if we are genuinely listening for something, we will be very humble and will be trying to seek the truth. Humble doesn't mean that whatever other person is telling you will accept it. Humble means that you are looking. For example, like there are many times you say some discussion going on. One can just do like several arguments, and no matter how much you say, other person is not to accept, and he will be stick to his opinion.
Hello, sir. Your voice is breaking.
Okay, sorry, I had I think some internet issues, so just it got disconnected. So the point I was saying that why we need to be submissive. So anyway, this is directly from Bhagavad Gita, and we'll see further about it. The second question is, how did Arjuna remove his confusion? Just give it a moment. I think my screen will be visible. Yeah. How did Arjuna remove his confusion?
By surrendering himself to Krishna.
Okay, Aryan, thank you. And anyone else? Those who are not actually interacting, I'll request who are there. Let me check. There are about 37 participants. I would request others also to participate. Okay, so one has to actually look for the solution, and and uh, and of course one has to reach to authority. For example, let's say if you want to get this engineering education, you won't go anywhere and everywhere. The best place you will try to go, for example, in India we have these IITs, and so that way you get the education, engineering knowledge. So similarly, for this knowledge, like for the spiritual knowledge, we have to accept some spiritual authority. So Bhagavad Gita is such spiritual authority. Okay, third question is, Bhagavad Gita is a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. Why should I read it? I'll request those who didn't speak, let them give the chance now.
Sir, because it is valid for everyone. Knowledge of
Gokul
Bhagavad
Nath.
Gita is, yes, sir.
Arjuna is just a medium, and Krishna told the Gita to for everybody's well-being.
Okay, Jess, very good. And another point I told. Any other point anyone wants to share? Though both the points were right.
Reversal of life is a part of everyone's life, and we need a solution of it, and we need to seek real truth, absolute truth. So Bhagavad Gita is describing about absolute truth. So
Very
we must
good.
read.
Very good, Mayank. Okay, any other point? For example, let's say there are other knowledges also. For example, how to make money, and let's say how to build a house. That's also a knowledge. Is it relevant to everybody, or it's relevant to some particular people? So you can see that those knowledge, let's say how to build a house, that knowledge is not relevant to everybody. But whereas Bhagavad Gita is relevant to everyone, for like irrespective of caste, creed, gender and nationality, it doesn't matter. So that point we have seen, because it is the spiritual knowledge, and everyone is a spiritual entity, and therefore it is relevant to everyone. So I'll go maybe couple of great persons like review points. I'll comment specifically on Bhagavad Gita, and maybe let me just continue, and at the end I'll ask everyone to ask question. So this is Mahatma Gandhi. When doubts haunt me, when disappointments stare me in the face, and I see not one ray of hope on the horizon, I turn to Bhagavad Gita and find a verse to comfort me, and I immediately begin to smile in the midst of overwhelming sorrow. Those who meditate on the Gita will derive fresh joy and new meanings from it every day. So this is Mahatma Gandhi is saying. And then also we have the great scientist in the century, perhaps the most important scientist. So Albert Einstein is speaking about Bhagavad Gita. When I read the Bhagavad Gita and reflect about how God created this universe, everything else seems so superfluous. And there are many more great people. They have given very and they respected Bhagavad Gita and gave the highest regard to Bhagavad Gita. And many of them actually are Western philosophers and scientists like that. Okay, let's quickly go to the other section. Does scientific knowledge make me humble? So we'll do some certain scientific observations, and then we'll see that those observations, whether it is making us humble or what is the impact on it on us. The solar system has been a great source of inspiration for early scientists in the modern context. The astronomical data recorded by Tycho Brahe led to the discovery of laws of planetary motion by Johannes Kepler. Subsequently, Newton's universal law of gravitation captured the essence of it. So this is Newton speaking. The most beautiful system of the sun, planets, and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being. So Newton is giving one point here that the solar system is so systematic and so perfectly designed, and it doesn't seem to be a random event. Rather, the point is he's making here that intelligent and powerful being. So there is an intelligence behind it. It is not a random event. And in Bhagavad Gita, you will see throughout that nothing is by chance. Everything there is some proper reason and proper thing behind everything. So nothing is by chance. And I think in this connection, I want to just narrate one story. So Newton was from the beginning was believing in God, and if you read his life story, you will find a different thing. You will see him more than like scientist. He is a person seeking the truth, and in pursuit of that truth, actually he made some discovery, scientific discovery. That way we recognize Newton. So anyway, Newton had a friend who was not very much believing in God and existence of God, but they were friends. And one time, Newton always actually believing in God and his hand in everything, but he wanted to know how God created this universe. So that way he was working and trying to find the truth. So one point of time to give his friend a lesson, because friend was always arguing in the other way. So Newton made a small solar system. That's a model. We have seen that kind of model many places. So model is just you have like a globe, like small ball. This small model of the solar system, and it was so nicely made. So one time his friend came to Newton's house and saw this solar system model, and then asked Newton that who made it, dear friend? Did you make it or somebody else make it? It's very nice. Newton told that nobody made it. It is there by chance. Then his friend insisted that, are you joking with me? Please tell me. Probably you have made it. Then Newton told that, no, I am not joking. I am very serious. This is actually by chance it is there. Then after some insisting, and his friend became very angry and told that you are really joking with me. And how can this model will be here by chance? Then Newton told the fact that you see that this small model, which is not more than like taking 1 feet by 1 feet area, and you are saying that this cannot be by chance. There is an intelligence behind it. Somebody designed it and worked on it. And you think that this gigantic solar system is by chance, and how perfectly actually everything is operating. So that was one quick point. These scientific laws may not make much sense to ordinary populace. However, everybody can appreciate the fact that every object, planets in the solar system appear to be floating in space. For example, the planet Earth is like a sphere and it is spinning around her axis. If you think deeply, you will realize that all of us are actually hanging, our heads being downward and legs upward. Everything is hanging under some force. Ocean water is hanging, but it is not spilling out. This observation led Newton to coin the concept of gravitational force, by which the objects near the surface of the Earth are drawn towards the Earth. Irrespective of Newton's law of gravitation or Einstein's theory of space-time curvature, every great planet of the solar system has been perfectly situated from the time of creation. In this sense, God's law of gravitation still remains a mystery. So you can see this small yet very deep observation about the solar system. And before the discovery, Newton's discovery, the gravitational force was existing. And since the creation of this material universe, this gravitational force is always there. Let's do another observation. Solar system and my tiny existence. So sometimes we may think that, okay, we are an important person, and our position is very big, and that kind of thought may come. Let's see, when we observe the solar system, do we feel ourselves as tiny or we feel ourselves as great? Let's see. The radius of the earth itself is 6,371 kilometers. The distance between earth and the sun is approximately 150 million kilometers. The radius of the sun is 695,500 kilometers. The city where you are sitting is just a tiny part of this universe. In that tiny city, you live in a very small house. Although you claim that you are the owner of that house, the place is cohabited by numerous other living entities, mostly unnoticed by you. There are lizards, mosquitoes, and many other insects and microscopic germs, etc., which have forcefully occupied some of your space as well. If you count them, they will surely exceed the number of residents in your town. They are also as important as you think of yourself from their perspective. Such introspection about your identity in this gigantic solar system will naturally make you humble. In natural humanity, one starts asking thought-provoking questions. This question may resemble some of those stated below. What is the purpose of this creation? So these are the questions one naturally will ask if someone is observing these actually things in day-to-day life. So many times actually we might be in our career pursuit, the small observations we may not see, but I still remember, like in our childhood, when we see the open sky, we would feel that there are so many stars, earth, and many natural questions will come, that who we are, where we are staying. So Sir has put some of these questions, thought-provoking question. Why is the solar system organized the way it is? Why are there so many varieties of life forms, so many varieties of living entities? What is the purpose of my own existence? What is my identity? So there are many more questions, and naturally those questions will be raised in our mind, and sometimes we suppress it, thinking that probably there is no answer to it. But dear students, all the questions, whatever form of the question one may think of, any kind, Bhagavad Gita has the answer to it, all the questions. And also any problem is there is solution in Bhagavad Gita, because it is spiritual. Bhagavad Gita doesn't deal the problem in material level. Bhagavad Gita deal all the problem in a soul level, in a spiritual level, and therefore it's absolute. Basically, all the solutions are there. Numerous such questions may arise when one starts contemplating, introspecting, and questioning. In this way, the search for truth begins. Human life is very precious. In this life, if we do not give importance to the nature of the absolute truth, then our existence would be no better than animals. Why things are the way they are? What substance we are made up of? What will be our destination when we die? These are more important questions than the kind of questions that we are being conditioned to ask. So what type of questions we are being conditioned to ask? How to make money and how to get comfort, and like all kinds of questions which are which give the temporary benefit. But the question here is should be coming that what is death? Will I have to face the death? And if it is truth for everybody, then why we are not thinking about it? Why we are not doing something about it? Okay, let's see that in our regular science or in medical system there is no solution of it. Let's see if there is a solution in other place. And when we open the Bhagavad Gita, all the solutions, page after page, Bhagavad Gita have the solution how to overcome death. So true humility awakens us and makes us bold to ask pertinent question. So there is one question I'll ask. What does the observation of floating planets have to do with our quest for the absolute truth? So we do this several observations, and we are also searching for truth. Then what is the, so we are observing, and then what is the link between these two? Can anyone unmute and ask? Any new person wants to speak? Those who didn't speak yet. Let me see. There is Ravi, Kiran, Ishan, Jayesh, Mayank is speaking. Mit Solanki, Siddharth, Suryanshu, Varun, Vasu. So hope you all of you are following what I am speaking, and if you have any difficulty, you can interrupt me. So anyone would like to share that when you observe these, let's say, things, the solar system, or let's say the other thing also we have observed, like the gravitational field, and you know, so what it impact actually on us? Do we feel proud or we feel humble when we see our existence?
We feel humble and also see ourselves as a tiny part of that universe. And
Yeah,
we may also ask a question about how beautiful everything is and who created this and why created.
yes. And there could be many more questions like that. Okay, thanks, Mayank. So there is a second section. Let me see the time. It's 7:15, and let me see if anyone has any question so far. And if we don't have, then we'll just keep on continuing. So till now, whatever we read, does it make sense? So one point in the beginning, we talked about like the importance of Bhagavad Gita. Because in the beginning, if we don't have the understanding that, okay, there is great value in Bhagavad Gita, we will not put any effort to study or understand it. So we need to know the importance of Bhagavad Gita in the beginning. So that part is actually we read. Then another thing we read, that we have to become humble and ask the pertinent question, that is the relevant questions related to, you know, the real problem, real questions. For example, like Arjuna, we have seen that he has real situation in the life, because in the battlefield he has to fight against his most dear family members. Like he has grandfather Bhishma, his teacher Guru Drona, and brothers like 100 sons of Dhritarashtra, and all the family members, and you know, so he has a genuine crisis, and at that point he in humble state, in a genuine state, he was looking for the solution, and he got it, and he got the solution. Yeah, Abhinav, you are speaking, or who else speaking? Okay, so I think so far we read, maybe it's very simple to understand. So everybody, I think, is in the same page. So let's read the second part of it, section 1.3. So let's have some more closer observation in our day-to-day dealing. Everybody is a servant. So this is a, like, even before entering in the Bhagavad Gita, we could see these are the things. Let's read it. Parents serve their children, a leader serves his followers, a student serves his teacher, and a teacher serves his students. Plants and animal kingdom serve human society and vice versa. If you may say that, oh, okay, we are human being, we don't care about animal, and we don't care about the plants, trees, and natural resources. We can just go cut down, destroy. Okay, you may do that. Then ultimately, what will happen? We'll chop our own leg itself, basically. So there is a symbiotic relationship between all the creatures. If one is destroyed by force, then others will immediately get will be impacted. If you take care of your garden, you will get flowers and fruits. If you take care of your paddy crops, you will get rice and wheat. If you take care of water bodies, then you will get fresh water. Nothing is free for us. We must serve to survive. So this is very clear, right? So this is a very big change of thought process. Usually we think that we are the king in our whatever the place we have, but ultimately we can see that unless we serve, we cannot survive. And those who are not interested in doing these services, they are called selfish, and nobody wants to be selfish. And selfish has a very negative connotation, negative feeling for everybody, and nobody wants to be that. Whoever is serving nicely, they are very happy. That is also another important point. They are willingly and voluntarily accepting this service. They are very happy as well. Let's see the example. If you observe your mother, she serves you, and you can always see happiness on her face. As long as you are happy, she is also happy. There are thus two distinct observations. So these observations are here. We are all servants. Service must be selfless to become happy. So more one becomes selfless and serving, so more the person will be happy. So this is a secret actually, and that secret is there and coming from Bhagavad Gita. Okay, there are two questions. In what way does a blade of grass serve? So let's think about it. You are all IITians, so let's see. In what way does a blade of grass serve?
Sir, when the blade of grass is in, it falls in water, it serves the ant and other small insects. They actually they sit on that, and they, whenever it rains, the fields are full of water. Then also it helps the small insects to sit on it and float, and saves their life.
Okay, that's a good one.
Sir,
Okay, anyone else?
Right. It serves
Sir.
many herbivorous animals.
Yes, sir.
Good.
So
And
it also serves the soil by preventing soil erosion
very
and
good.
many
Yeah,
other ways.
yeah, many other ways. Yeah, I was immediately thinking the second point some of you were mentioning. Like, for example, cows eat the grass, and cow give a fresh milk. So I was thinking that point. Anyway, all are correct. In what way does a housefly serve?
So they are the source of food for like frogs and lizards, and so they also have a means efficient role in controlling the population of various species. Like means they spread diseases which control the population of various species, we can say.
Okay, Alok, good. Anyone else?
So they help in biodegradation of waste material, like they eat on the stool and then they convert it into simpler forms.
Okay, very good, Varun. Anyway, all of you
So
know, like everybody. Uh,
they
Siddharth,
cause
yeah.
matlab they carry pollen grains from flower to flower or something like that, so that
Yeah, I
flowers
think that
can produce.
is that the housefly, or that one is the wo madhumakhi wala hai. I think the other one.
Um,
But anyway,
yes,
everybody.
Housefly also.
fly मधुमक्खी कह सकते हैं, मधुमक्खी जो है, हाउस फ्लाई तो नहीं होती वो.
We will learn from Bhagavad Gita that somebody told that like it creates a disease and population is controlled automatically. That one was good. Anyway, funny. We will learn from Bhagavad Gita that we must selflessly serve with devotion to the absolute truth to become happy. So that is like the conclusion. Okay, the second observation we'll make. Okay, we all seek relationships. All human beings, as human beings, we are committed to various relations in this world. Parental relationships bind father and mother to their kids. A servant is bound by a servitor relationship with his or master. Friendship is something that we crave for, while conjugal love adds another dimension to our human bonding. There are some for whom we reserve our awe and reverence. These are basic relationships that we see in this world. These relationships become sublime and pure when grounded in eternity and selfless attitude. So this is the point I read at last. So this point is about the relationship actually. You see, like this sweet relationship everybody is looking for, and there are different dimensions. For example, the relation with the mother, it has a different sweetness, and then father has a different, brother, sister, and then grandfather, grandmother, and different dimension. Like for example, those who are grown up, they will have a different dimension. Again, they have children, grandchildren, like that in the society, different relation. So in introduction to Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada talks about this. We all have a relationship with the absolute truth. God is not something inanimate. God is a person. So as a person, we can approach him. The moment God is impersonal, you cannot approach him. If you simply think that God is gigantic and infinite, then how will you approach him? So this is very beautiful. In fact, in the Western world, when they accept the Bhagavad Gita, this is the key thing they like, that Bhagavad Gita presents that God is a person. Actually, Bible also speaks about it, that man is made after the image of God. So God also will look similar feature, like two hands, two legs, like similar feature. But it is not very much elaborate, not like our Bhagavad Gita. So the point here, it is mentioned that with Supreme Lord, we have the relation, and yoga means to revive that relation. And when that relation is revived, or basically rediscovered, basically it's already there. Discovery means, like, same thing you are just finding out again. So when we revive that relationship, and the process of it is yoga. Yoga means connection between us and the absolute truth. And from here we can clearly understand God is a person. And let's say if you consider, so God has of course another feature. So that is the all-pervading bright light. It's called Brahman. But the origin of Brahman is Krishna actually. Param Brahma, Param Dharma, Pavitram, Paramam Bhuvan. So that is one of the verse in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna is directly saying that you are the origin of Brahman effulgence. So,
one question.
Yeah, Jayes.
Sir, if we consider God as means light and infinite, not as a person, then it becomes more easier to means connect yourself with the God as it is infinite. It is present everywhere, and we are in constant surrounding of God. Means it means helps to connect
So what,
with God.
Jayes, there is several things. God is infinite, that point is correct actually. And all the points you have mentioned, all are correct about God. But one thing is that, but the last point you told that in that way, you cannot actually make relation with him. For example, you cannot actually serve him and you cannot, let's say, you cannot consider him as your friend. Can you? And can you, like, let's say, for example, like the devotees of Krishna, they cook for Krishna and feed Krishna. And Krishna likes, for example, butter. All of you know. And can we do that if we accept the other school of thought? We cannot have that actually sweet relation. And you can see that although Krishna is infinite, but see, this is the beauty of God, that since he is infinite, he can do whatever he likes to do. And this is a way he derived the most pleasure, that by having a different relations with different types of other entities. So one question you may ask, and many people ask, that why God created us? What is the purpose of us? If he is complete and he is not dependent on anybody, then what we are doing and why we are here? We should be. So the purpose of us and actually our real duty is to serve him, and serve in a relationship. So for example, you see that Yashoda Mai, there is a just picture is coming and discussion is coming, that she is actually serving Krishna in the mood of parental love. And Krishna is very pleased with that service. And therefore, although Krishna is infinite and all powerful, he accepts the chastisement of Mother Yashoda. And Mother Yashoda can actually take a stick and run behind Krishna and bind Krishna and chastise. And that relation Krishna likes. Of course, in the other side, if someone comes in a different mood, let's say to fight, real fight, Krishna does that. And he reciprocates with that entity in that mood. For example, Sisupal, Jarasandha, Kamsa, they came with a fighting spirit, and Krishna reciprocated in that way, and they were all killed. So of course, when we talk Krishna is person and God is a person, that doesn't mean that we are so infinite becomes limited. He remain infinite. So there is one example that will be coming since Siddhartha asked this question. So there is one sweet pastime of Krishna. So Krishna ate one time dart, and devotees complained that to Mother Yashoda that Krishna has eaten dart. And so mother was very concerned, because Mother Yashoda is in parental love. So she will be always concerned about Krishna's well-being. And she asked Krishna. Krishna told that, no, I didn't eat. And then Mother Yashoda was started chastising little bit and told that, open your mouth. And when Krishna opened mouth, mother saw that all the universes are inside Krishna's mouth. In fact, they themselves, Krishna and Mother Yashoda, that pastime, that incident also is happening inside Krishna. So the point infinite, one thing is that it is inconceivable. So it is not easy to conceive the idea. And we will never be able to conceive the idea of infinite. Only we can actually understand our relationship with the infinite. So that is the point. Let me know if anybody has any question at any point of time.
Sir,
Yeah.
So just to add to the question, now even if we do consider Krishna to be a person or to be infinite in nature, I'm saying, in that case, shouldn't whatever applied to the person also apply to the infinite figure?
Naren, can you ask the question again?
Yes, sir. What I basically mean is that as it's mentioned here, is that Krishna is a person. Now the thing is that it's said that it's inconceivable to think of Krishna as the infinite source he is, but
how can we
shouldn't
think
it
him as a person, right?
No, but yes, sir. I mean, shouldn't it also be possible to actually relate to him, even if he is infinite?
So maybe I could not get the question very clearly, but one thing I'll add here, that you see that infinite, we cannot conceive the idea of infinite. We can just reach up to a point that, okay, this is just thought study. Let's say Sir also did that study of like counting the sands, counting the particle, but those are actually countable infinite. So so when the infinite, the absolute truth speaks, that much we can know. Like when he's speaking in Bhagavad Gita, that knowledge actually we can know. It is not that we can know Krishna completely by studying Bhagavad Gita, but we can know what is required for us to know. So
Can I
Naren,
elaborate this
So
question?
if I could rephrase the question,
right.
Could I say that, okay, now Krishna as a person, could I say that Krishna would have a form, sir?
Yeah, person
But
means he has a form.
But at the same time, he can also be formless, no, sir?
Right, correct.
So I mean, isn't that contradictory?
That is the contradictory it will be, because our idea is based on the material understanding. So the absolute truth simultaneously can be form and also formless, because it is in the absolute platform. For example, like there is that Big Bang theory. Of course, Bhagavad Gita doesn't speak in that way, but there is a point where even this material science talks about the what is that called, where that all the laws are actually no more valid.
Black hole.
Sorry?
Singularity.
Singularity. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, Vasu. Singularity. So spiritual thing, you can think something like that. It no more like the material logic and material calculation doesn't apply. Why it is not apply? You see, spiritual level, there is nothing is temporary. All are eternal. And time becomes subservient. So time is no more a driving factor there, because nothing is influenced by time. And of course, the time is there, but time doesn't destroy anything. But in the material world, time destroy everything and everyone. So therefore, actually, that same logic we cannot apply in the spiritual level and to the absolute person. So the Brahman effulgence, actually, Bhagavad Gita accept that is also one of the feature of the Supreme Lord. But it accept in a way that God is so like bright and effulgent, and this is actually the light coming out from him. So these are the some light, maybe slowly we'll find more.
Yes, sir.
Is that okay for now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
हेलो सर।
Yeah.
यस सर।
Yeah.
सर मैं एक एग्जांपल देना चाहता हूँ कि मतलब कि इनफाइनाइट के बारे में कि वो कैसे इनफाइनाइट है या नहीं है। जैसे सर एक सर्कुलर पाथ है और उसमें यदि कोई एक व्यक्ति उसकी लंबाई को नापना चाहे तो वो कभी उसकी लंबाई नहीं नाप सकता। मान लीजिए एक सर्कुलर पाथ है ना, उसकी कोई यदि मान जैसे जैसे वो आगे बढ़ता है, मान लीजिए पीछे की चीजें बदल जाती है तो वो कभी उसकी लंबाई नहीं माप सकता उस सर्कुलर पाथ की। इसी तरह मटेरियल वर्ल्ड होता है, जैसे जैसे हम आगे जाते हैं पीछे की चीजें बदल जाती हैं। तो मटेरियल एग्जिस्ट करता है, उसमें घटनाएं घटती हैं, केवल वो उसका बड़ा होना। आप एक लंबाई भी एक अपना इल्यूजन है। जैसे यदि हम सपने में देखें तो सपने में हम 2 मीटर के ब्लैक बोर्ड को अपन सपने में भी देख सकते हैं। हम कहेंगे कि ये 2 मीटर का ब्लैक बोर्ड है सपने में भी, लेकिन वो वास्तव में 2 मीटर का नहीं होता, वो भी एक इल्यूजन है। तो वास्तव में तो यहाँ पार्टिकल एग्जिस्ट करते हैं केवल, और उसमें घटनाएं होती हैं। तो इसलिए यहाँ कोई इनफाइनाइट नहीं है, ना कुछ अस्तित्व है, ना कुछ हम कह सकते हैं इसके बारे में।
Ajit, you have some observation. Okay. So, okay, good. So, we'll continue maybe a little more and then this part will be end. I think one section is there. Yeah, I think couple of points are there. Maybe I'll not read it. I'll just mention it. So here this next point is that we seek possession or proprietorship. I think this is very good. Just quickly let me read. Each one of us is very proud of our own body and would like to have this body for eternity. Do you possess your body? Now you are young and you don't want to become old. But is that possible? Youth is given to you and it will also be snatched away from you. Time takes away everything. Time gives you everything and times take it back. Time gives you family and time will snatch you away. Time will snatch you away from the same family. Do you possess your car, your home, your intellect, your money, your wealth, your followers, etc.? So there are some examples. After that, Margaret Thatcher, one of the British Prime Minister, she forgot actually, like she was so sick that she didn't know that her husband already died. So, and this part actually is focused on temporariness of this material world. And at one point of time, we had nothing, and slowly we started recognizing that this belongs to me, that belongs to me, I need more, and this and that. And after one point, like their death comes, then everything goes away. So this is one of the observation in the previous section, possession and proprietorship. And then the next, this point also is similar. Temporariness pervades this world. Everything in this world is temporary. The United Kingdom is smaller in size to Uttar Pradesh, one of the province in India. So that is the Uttar Pradesh. Yet at one point of time, British ruled almost the entire world. That vast British empire is no more there. The great USSR is no more. Many great civilizations have come and gone by the influence of great time, color. Neither happiness nor misery is permanent. Neither success or failure is permanent. All of one's achievements and accomplishments hardly make any sense at the end of his life. Even great leaders like Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, and Indira Gandhi had to submit to this temporariness of this world. So their name is mentioned because at one point of time they were ruling the almost like a massive part of the world basically. We are mere mortals. As Indians, we know very well that in spite of all our so-called achievements, at the end, this body will be taken on 4 bamboos to the cremation ground. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 8:15, Mam upetyatu punarjanma dukkhalaya masaswatam napnuvanti mahatmanaha samsiddhim paramam gataha. After attaining me, the great soul who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. So the conclusion, there are few more couple of points only, and then we'll end it. So Bhagavad Gita is that timeless science which enlightens people of all ages in such deliberations. We are always servants. We seek pure and eternal relationships. We owe no proprietorship in this world, and our so-called identities and existence are devoured by the temporariness of this world. Nobody can deny these observations. Thus, Lord Krishna advises us through Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita 5:29, Bhaktaram Yogya Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheswaram Suhid Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shantim Richati. A person in full consciousness of me means here Krishna is speaking. So a person in full consciousness of Krishna, knowing Krishna to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attain peace from the pangs of material miseries. So this ends our today's reading. Just the last part I will summarize that few of the points we read, the temporariness of this material world, and we see that how even the great people, one point of time, they were so powerful or wealthy, but when the death came, everybody was thrown out from their position. And also the last point we read, this Bhagavad Gita verse, it is actually a like lot of things are packed in this verse, but the point to understand is that same all about yoga. Yoga means to connect with the Supreme Lord and to serve actually in that relation. So if you connect in that way, then this sloka makes a lot of sense, that Supreme Lord is the ultimate beneficiary. So if we do something for his pleasure, then actually that is the right thing to do, because everything is meant for his pleasure. But if we try to do otherwise, then that will lead to misery. And he is the Supreme Lord for all the planets and demigods, and benefactor and well-wisher. So there is no one better well-wisher than the Lord himself, because he is our kind father, and if we turn to him and look towards him, he will always actually take care of us. He is anyway taking care of us, but if we turn towards him, he will take care in a proper way, because our free will has to be submitted in a proper way. Then only he can give the knowledge. Like a quick example, like in Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna in the beginning didn't speak. Arjuna was keep on speaking and telling many things, many arguments. Those who read a little bit and those who attended previous sessions, you will know that Arjuna didn't want to fight. That was the situation, and he gave many reasons, and then Krishna didn't speak anything, and Arjuna himself was giving many reasons, and then felt that what am I doing, what am I speaking, this is not making any sense. His mouth was dried up, his hands were shaking, his arrow and Gandiva bow fall down from his hand, and he was shaking, and at that point he surrendered to Krishna and asked for his guidance. When he asked for his guidance, then Krishna started speaking. So this is a point, that as long as Krishna has given us free will, if we turn towards him, then only he will provide the ultimate knowledge actually. So that's it for today, and I'll take a few questions, and then we'll end actually in our next session, the first session. Okay, somebody is asking a question. Let me see the chat box. Noren Rao, sir, I have seen that Krishna is referred to as Supreme Personality of Godhead. What is Supreme Personality of Godhead, and how it is different from God? Actually, these are two similar point, but Srila Prabhupada translate it in a very beautiful way and in a meaningful way. supreme personality of Godhead. So one point here to mention that Bhagavan or God is a person, and he is the supreme personality. So God has a actually abode, or the dham we call in our language is as dham. So that dham is actually spiritual world. So that is Godhead actually, and he is the supreme personality of that Godhead. So that is the way actually Srila Prabhupada translates. So God is a person. That is the main point actually to take from Bhagavad Gita, and we can have relation with God. You will see like in the coming lessons, there are primarily 5 relations actually with Supreme Lord. One can be in a relationship in a Santeros, and then there is Dasyaros, like a servant. Sakhyaras, one can be friend of Supreme Lord, and parental love, and then conjugal love. One can be in a relationship of conjugal love. So anyone else has any comment, question, any violent objection also is welcome. Please speak. So this is a good ground actually, because you will be going through your Learn Gita, Live Gita study, and you know, Sir has actually more than 30 years, about 35 years of experience, and you know, he is a well-known and reputed professor in the institute, and he is doing wonderful like in academic research and all the academic field, and simultaneously he is taking this study of Bhagavad Gita because it provides a great benefit for everybody. And I was also, as I mentioned before to you, all of you, I was also student 10 years back, and I somehow I got connected with Sir's Bhagavad Gita teaching, and then through different friends, those who are very close to Sir's Bhagavad Gita teaching, they guided me, and slowly I understood that our own culture, our own knowledge, but in the pursuit of like becoming Western, I wanted to become like American. I gave up actually my own study, and anyway, in IIT Kanpur, I had a good time in studying and practicing Bhagavad Gita while studying. And then I went to abroad for several years, about 7 years. And wherever I have gone. Maybe a couple of things in my screen I have. I was just thinking if I can get time to share it. So actually in the beginning time, I went to National University of Singapore. And if you can see my screen, so they actually almost all the institutes, at least the primary major institutes in the world, has Bhagavad Gita study like this kind of program is there. So you won't feel that this practice will be discontinued. So there are many friends you will find, and there are some faculties in the department. They will also help you to practice it. So in Singapore, actually, there is one professor in Faculty of Medicine, in the middle figure, Niketa Chotai, her name. So she is actually taking all the sessions, and there are many events, and the best part is that always at the end there is sumptuous feast. In the Western world, sometimes the delicious foods are missing. From India, you might think that in America we can have great feast. Whatever you are, of course, all of you are not in the campus. Whatever you are eating here, know that that is the best you are eating. Never think that in outside you will get that. I went actually another place for my studies at North Carolina State University. There also is a great like Bhagavad Gita study place. You can search like in Facebook. There is Facebook page, and every week actually there are about 70 to 75 students. They gather. Most of them are local Americans, but they participate in our Hare Krishna Mahamantra chanting, and they really like our musical kirtan. They dance, and after that philosophical discussion, then feast. So for them, all our dishes are new, and they really enjoy. And sometimes we go to different picnic spots in temple, Radha Krishna temple, and they do services also in the kitchen. And they, by doing this, that selfless service, they really feel happy. So you will not miss. You can search any university. I just gave two names because I was with these institutes, and while staying there, I knew that all the major institute have our Bhagavad Gita study circle, and but both the institutes like NUS and NCSU, luckily Sir also came to both the places, and Sir also gave a talk. Of course, Sir went to many other places like MIT, Massachusetts, and Sir came to Montreal also, where I was also staying one point of time. So there is McGill University and Concordia University. Sir talked there also about Bhagavad Gita. So, dear students, nobody has any question, anything so far?
Sir, I have a question, sir. Sir, what are the most prominent changes that you experienced before and after experiencing Gita?
That's a very good question, Alok. What should I say? Tell, like, my student life was. Many of you are not in the campus. In the student life, in the hostel, the life will be entirely different. Life will be upside down. But like, in very short period of time, I realized that actually it is killing my health, my education, everything is getting disturbed, and I was looking for some solution. And at that point, when we look for solution, and there is always there, solution is there. And when I took to this process, the life is completely regulated, and it's so wonderful. Like, we get up, like, whatever the biological clock is there, we are tuned to that, getting up early in the morning and doing chanting. And if you talk about the habits, many things are there, and many things maybe I could tell you in person. In public forum, we may not be able to speak many things, but I can tell you that it's all purifying, and the life will be entirely changed. It is not only you will change, it's actually all, me, my wife, my in-laws family, my own family, and like many of the students whom I came across, when they see the change, positive change, everybody accept it. So these are the few quick points.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, if you wouldn't mind, I would like to make a small announcement.
Yeah, Abhishek.
Yes. So I would like to announce that the session which we did today of reading like Bhagavad Gita is a continuous process. We have to make it every day. Like in my first year also, seniors used to come in our hostel, and every day from 7 to 7:30 around, they used to be with us. They used to teach us Bhagavad Gita every day without fail. So continuing that same spirit, we are also thinking to keep these sessions every day, just for 20 minutes every day, exactly at 7. We are planning to keep it exactly at 7 p.m. Is 7 p.m. fine for everyone? Does anyone have any other engagement at 7 p.m.? I think if no one is saying, then we'll finalize.
It might be possible that later on we might have certain meetings or something that might be held during that time period. So I
do you
mean,
have regular meetings at 7 p.m. or some?
not regular, but it just rarely, I could say.
So no problem. We'll also share with you recording in case some days if you are missing due to some. We can also see that if many people have the same issue, then we can also shift But I think in my experience also 7 p.m. was the best time, because like I was also in the campus for 3 years, so I found that 7 p.m. was the best time which was there. So
Okay.
if there are some occasional meetings, no problem, we'll share you the recordings, or we can also change the time if many people have that issue. So we'll finalize it at 7 p.m. We'll just read, today we read a vast material, like covering almost 3-4 pages, but for 20 minutes we'll just read 1-2 paragraphs. But this regular connection, regular coming will very much help you to enhance your concepts of Bhagavad Gita. And this is what also helped me to get a better understanding of Gita. So I would request that everyone attend these sessions. We'll also put the message regarding this and this session will be taken by different seniors, like PhD students from IIT Kanpur. Someone is saying he has his taekwondo classes from 6:30 p.m. Mandvi Singh. What time is taekwondo? What time does it end? Mandvi Singh. 8 p.m. she's saying. Okay, but 8 p.m. will be late for everyone, I think. So I think we'll share with you the recording and we'll see what can be done. But mostly 7 p.m. is for majority, it is fine, I guess. So we'll see what we can do for other people. Maybe we can also keep one alternate timing session, so that those who are not able to attend at 7 p.m. they can attend the alternative slot. But we'll see to it once we begin it from tomorrow. So I'd shared all the details in the WhatsApp message and all those things. So yes, and I would also like to thank sir for sharing his valuable experiences and taking out his time to explain the beautiful concepts in the Bhagavad Gita course. And I would also like that if someone has till now not registered on the Learn Gita Live Gita course, he do it as soon as possible, because see, we have covered today we have covered almost the content of one video. If you will go together, if see, watching the videos is your homework, and the text material we'll discuss in the class, and the doubts which you get from the video you can also ask in the class. So the video part will be your homework. You have to at least watch 2-3 videos, but 2-3 videos of 20 minutes is not a big task, I think, weekly, so you can do it. So but if you go together videos and text material, then it will be, you will really gain a lot. And also asking questions, through asking questions you will gain a lot. So I'd like to thank sir. Sir, would you like to say something more?
Yeah, I think here we have Jaisal Prabhu is there. Maybe he will make a quick announcement. Yeah, Jaisal Prabhu, you can speak.
We also have a WhatsApp group, and I think link has been shared with you, or Abhishek can share the link again with you. If you have not joined that group, then please join, because then we'll have a closer connection, and then if you have some issues, you can share it there itself, so that we can respond to it faster, right? So that will be nice, and then things will be a little more quicker.
Yeah, I have shared
Abhishek?
the link of the WhatsApp group in the chat window. So in case you are not in that group, please join, because since you can see that we are around 30-40 close group of connections. So if we are connected through WhatsApp group, we can communicate very frequently as compared to through emails or personalized messages. And we can also discuss many things in that group. So I'd like, and in case someone has till now not registered in the Learn Gita Live Gita course, please do it as soon as possible, because see, we have started from today, so you can go there. And those we have also given many people discounts based on what was their response. So in case you are I would like that everyone registers for the course. don't go ahead that the cost is 1500. In case you are not able to pay, we'll give you the course free of course, because we want to make you learn Bhagavad Gita, and that course fee is just the course fee should not be an obstacle between you and us to. So in case you are not able to pay, just tell us genuinely. We'll give you at very minimal cost or no cost at all. But everyone should register. I think maximum have already done. Like I know Mayank Chaurasia, Varun Pant, Vasu, they have all registered. So has anyone started watching the video? Did anyone watch any video on of the course yet, or no one has started?
Yeah.
How was your experience? Can you just share your experience of the video? How was the video? And
I've watched the first 5. I mean, under lesson 1.
so
I think
you
it's
completed
basically
already
today's.
lesson one. There are only
So
6 videos, I think, in lesson one, and you have watched 5. So you have completed the lesson.
Right. So today's text was also based on lesson 1 itself.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
So how was your
But
experience of watching the 5 videos?
what I can definitely say is that it's engrossing, and the thing is that when we try reading the Bhagavad Gita by ourselves, it gives a different perspective, and when we listen to a person who has experienced and gone through the principles of Bhagavad Gita, it's a different perspective. So it's really nice to actually see the difference in perspective and learn a lot more.
Yeah, that was very good to hear. And some other person also said, I think Alok Kumar. Yes, Alok, how was your experience of watching the videos?
Yeah, as Naren already said, it was very nice, and also the same thing that the way sir explains the thing means it feels very good and nice. Like uh, it really touches the heart. Means we get the essence of what sir is saying in the video.
Yeah, that was very also good to hear. So like sir is telling in the video, and this material also is solely prepared by sir. So we'll read the material here, and you can watch the videos at home. And if both go simultaneously, then you'll get perfectly what sir wants to convey through this course. So you'll get the maximum benefit from this course. Yes, sir. Sir, if you want to say something before we end.
Yeah, Abhishek, I think you told everything about the course. Just only thing I'll mention, like I mentioned it before also, that Sir has put like so much effort, and this is a timeless science. And as you asked, like my experience, I could tell you, like if you register, and it's free of cost, like nothing costs, and there is no monetary benefit, as Abhishek mentioned. Sir is a professor here. Why it is just kept because people will take it seriously. So that's it, and start doing it, then you will see the real benefit.
Also,
Anyway, we'll be.
I would like to
Yeah.
say that this idea of this course came from the IITK lecture series itself. So sir used to conduct IITK lecture series. He used to prepare slides, and he did it for 10 years. And then the idea came that why not we bring online correspondence course, and like it is perfect for us. Because the sir taught first 10 years to IIT students. He saw what was the mentality of IITians, how do they think, and based on is like this is nearly, you can see that this is 15 years of background practice for this course. Sir used to prepare slides for first IIT students, and then this evolved into text material and all those things. So it is like perfect for us. And after doing this course, if you read Bhagavad Gita, then you'll understand everything that's written in Bhagavad Gita. So yes, sir, you can continue.
Yeah, I think that's it, Abhishek. Maybe we can end for today.
Yeah. So I'd like to thank sir and all our participants here for patient hearing. So thank you, sir. I'm ending the session.
Yeah.